The door was wide open, the hearth cold, and the beds unmade, but the men were gone. The storm clawed at the cliffs as Thomas Marshall stepped onto Flannan Isle, his oilskin coat snapping like a sail in the wind. Behind him, Edmund Clark muttered about wasted rations and ghost stories, while Walter Doyle crossed himself, his lips moving in silent prayer. The lighthouse loomed above them, its beam absent, its windows black. Inside, the air reeked of spoiled meat. A half-eaten meal sat on the table, congealed fat glistening in the lamplight. Thomas's boot crunched a shattered clock, its hands frozen at 2:47. Walter hovered near the doorway, trembling. They wouldn't leave the door open. Not in a storm like this, Edmund snorted. Maybe they fled, went mad from boredom. But Thomas's gut tightened as he climbed the spiral stairs. In the lantern room, he found the logbook splayed open, the final entry smeared with something dark. December 15. The shadows are climbing. They sing in the stones. Outside, the waves roared like a living thing. That night, the foghorn screamed. Not a mechanical wail, a human one. Edmund jolted awake, sweat pooling in the hollow of his throat. The foghorn's shriek still rang in his skull, a raw, wet sound, like a man drowning in his own lungs. "You heard it too," Walter whispered. He crouched by the hearth, stoking embers that refused to catch. "It's her, the old woman of the sea. She's calling us." "It's a valve," Edmund snapped. "Malfunctioning pressure." But Thomas said nothing. He traced his finger over the journal he'd found hidden beneath a floorboard. The previous keeper's handwriting spiraled into madness. "They come at low tide. Their voices are in the walls. Cut the light. Cut it and run." At dawn, Walter was gone. His bed reeked of kelp. Salt water pooled beneath Walter's bed. His eyes were milk white when they found him. They discovered Walter at the cliff's edge, his body arched toward the sea. His eyes had dissolved into opaline pools, and his mouth hung open, tongue bloated and blue. "He fell," Edmund said, but his voice wavered. Thomas knelt, peeling back Walter's sleeve. Blisters mottled the skin, oozing brine. "He didn't fall. They took him." Back in the lighthouse, Edmund translated the stone tablet's runes by lamplight. 3 lights must drown to quiet the tide. He laughed, high and frayed. Poetic nonsense. That night, Thomas saw her, his wife Eileen, standing ankle-deep in the surf. Her hair writhed with eels. "Join me," she pleaded, her voice harmonizing with a deeper guttural rasp. He loaded his revolver. Edmund's camera captured it all, the shadow behind him, the hands dragging him into the dark. Edmund's camera light bobbed down the basement stairs. "For the record, this is not how I die," he said, aiming for levity. The footage jolted as he kicked open a rusted door. The room stank of iodine and rot. A stone altar dominated the space, etched with the same runes as the tablet. Seaweed clung to its base like veins. "Thomas, look." The screen blurred. A shadow unfurled behind Edmund. A tangle of limbs and seaweed. Hands, black and glistening, seized his ankles. The camera hit the floor, capturing his scream, the wet crunch of bone, then static. When Thomas found the basement, the lens of the lighthouse above shattered with a gunshot crack. The beam burned crimson. Thomas struck the match. As the tower burned, the sea began to scream. Thomas doused the stairs in lamp oil, the red light painting him in hellish strokes. He'd read the journal's final truth. Destroy the light. Break the cycle. The first match hissed to life. Outside, the waves convulsed. Hands of foam and bone surged over the cliffs, scrabbling at the tower. The entity's voice boomed. Eileen's sob, Walter's prayer, Edmund's scream, all twisted into a chorus. Thomas dropped the match. Fire swallowed the lighthouse. As the roof collapsed, he glimpsed the horizon. Shadows rising from the depths, a city of drowned spires. Decades later, a boy found a waterlogged journal on the beach. Inside, a new entry glistened with fresh ink. "It's still hungry."